Hello and welcome to HCB, where today we are doing the review show for week 20 of the Premier League. Hope you all had a nice middle time between Christmas and New Year that no one really cares about, but except for the football. I know it's been as thrilling as yours for me. I can tell. Believe me, this week we're going to have a lot to talk about when it comes to my team. But we're not talking about West Ham first. We are talking about the early kickoff on Saturday, which was Brighton 2, Bournemouth 1. Now, yes, I did get this one wrong. I just thought Bournemouth might put up a bit more of a fight. But goals from Jahan Bakash and Aaron Moy sealing it for Brighton, putting them in 14th in the league. Meanwhile, Bournemouth down in 16th. This is Jahan Bakash's first goal for Brighton, making his 27th appearance, and it was a very nice goal, you've got to say. And if he could continue scoring more of them, then he is on the right path. When it came to the game itself, Brighton were all over Bournemouth, to be fair. They thoroughly deserved the win. Like 16 shots, 6 on target, and their possession once again was bigger than Bournemouth's, which Brighton continue that theme of doing better than their opponents when it comes to possession and controlling the game, whether they be home or away. As for Bournemouth, this is another loss for them. They are in big trouble of getting into a relegation battle this season, as they are in 16th at the halfway stage of the season. At the halfway stage, they can easily they can get out of this. It is still relatively tight down that area. I'd say we would have to wait till February, in my honest opinion, to see what teams are in the relegation battle. And I know I'm not just saying that because West Ham are in there. I promise you, I'm not just saying that. But they are desperately missing Callum Wilson at this moment because he's been injured out for a while. And they're missing his goal-scoring threat up top. Definitely in the last few games you see they haven't been able to score many goals at all. With regards to the next games, Chelsea, teams play on New Year's Day. Chelsea go to Brighton in the early kickoff. Meanwhile, Bournemouth take on West Ham at the London Stadium at 5:30. We now move on to St James's Park, where it was Newcastle 1, Everton 2, Dominic Calvert-Lewin getting a brace, cancelling out Fabian Schär's goal for Newcastle. And I'll tell you what, when it came to Newcastle, I was shocked to find out it was a defender that scored. I mean, they never do that, the defenders. It's a rarity. I'm pretty sure some of their defenders got more goals than Joelinton. In fact, I am 100% sure Jetro Willems has 2. That is more than Joelinton. But this does mean that Everton leapfrog Newcastle in the table. Everton go to 10th, but meanwhile Newcastle go to 11th. Definitely a game where Everton showed their style under Ancelotti, again reaching 22 shots not on target, 22 shots, 9 on target, which is a very hefty amount, and 58% possession away from home is very good. I know Newcastle don't tend to have the most possession, but still to get that amount is very good. One thing they will need to be criticised, conceding 20 shots overall throughout the game is not a number you want to have as a club. However, it is good. It is good on the plus side of Newcastle to be getting those chances. It's not that good that only 5 of those were actually on target, meaning once again they're not being clinical, and that's been the story of their season so far, despite their high position of 11 and despite probably them overachieving slightly. Their next games, Everton are at Manchester City at 5:30. Meanwhile, Newcastle play an equally tough game against Leicester, hosting them at 3 o'clock. Next up, it's Southampton versus Crystal Palace, and while I didn't get the fact it was 0-0 correct, it was 1-1, close enough, alright? Danny Ings cancelling out James Tompkins' earlier goal for Crystal Palace, making the tie odds as evens. Southampton continuing that unbeaten run now to 3 games, moving them to 15th in the league. Meanwhile, Crystal Palace in the top half of the table in 9th. When it came to the game, believe it or not, it wasn't the most thrilling game. Crystal Palace having a low amount of shots again, only 5, with 2 of them being on target. Meanwhile, Southampton actually having the bulk share of the chances, with 14 of them having 14 shots, 5 of them on target, 60% possession as well. But you can imagine most of that came after Crystal Palace's goal went in. This was one of many games, and I forgot to bring this up in the Brighton Bournemouth game. This was one of many games where a goal was disallowed. This one, it was fairly disallowed for offside. We will get to the ones that most likely were not. And I should point out the Brighton Bournemouth one, yeah, that was also fairly judged offside as well. So I will give credit. Don't worry, it won't be for long. Both teams are looking to bounce back and not to get a draw this in their next games. Saints welcome Spurs to St Mary's at 3 o'clock. Meanwhile, Crystal Palace travel to Norwich. We now move on to Watford versus Aston Villa, where it was Watford 3, Aston Villa 0, and what a result for Watford. 2 goals from Deeney and 1 from Ismaila Sarr, who actually put more power than 2 miles an hour onto his shot to get it in, meaning a win for them, and another great performance under Nigel Pearson. They may stay in 19th, Villa still in 18th, but they have closed the gap very much so on Villa. And yes, I was wrong in my prediction video. They don't go above them with a win, which is what I predicted. I predicted Watford would win. I predicted they would continue to move in the same vein. I didn't think they would continue that well. They were excellent once again. You can see that the improvements under Nigel Pearson and the fact Troy Deeney coming back have really helped. Like throughout the game, they had 20 shots, 6 of them on target. That definitely goes a long way into scoring goals. And the most important thing for them, I think, at the moment is the clean sheet. That's now 2 they've kept in their last 3 games. In total, in their last 3 games, they've only conceded 1 goal, which is a very good record to have. As for Villa, they need to vastly improve, because one thing I forgot to mention, and it's still, Mariappa got sent off in the 57th minute for Watford when they were down. When they were only 1-0 up. So you would think, the logical thing would be, right, Villa see they're down to 10 men. So what do they do? In theory, what should happen is Villa should draw, potentially get the equaliser, even go on for the win. What should not happen is Watford then to score 2 more goals and completely embarrass Aston Villa, which is what they did. At the end of the day, despite the form they're on, despite the form Watford are on, they are still they are still in the relegation zone for a reason. So the fact that Villa, who I've been praising and saying they should be nowhere near 18th, come there and get absolutely destroyed by them, it's not a good sign for them at all. And they are definitely a team in trouble this season. I think we all knew going into the season they could potentially be one of those sides, and I think it's from their issue of staying to their football, which, it's clearly worked for Sheffield United, the sides like that. But for the likes of Villa and Norwich, who we'll talk about later, it's not working very well. They need to adapt, and that's something Dean Smith needs to learn in the Premier League to do. He needs to learn to adapt. And I'm not sure Jack Grealish is actually they need to get Jack Grealish more involved. Playing him out on the wing does not get him involved whatsoever. Because the issue is the only player that could pass Jack Grealish out on the wing is Jack Grealish, and so you can't have him pass it to yourself. So that is where the issues lie. Both sides will be looking to potentially get out of the relegation zone on New Year's Day. Watford hosting Wolves. Meanwhile, Villa are away to Burnley. We now move on to the first of the 5:30 kickoffs, which was Norwich 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you a story quickly. Where basically my friend who watches the videos, he's one of them. He says he's a Spurs fan, and he said to me, "Oh wow, we'll definitely win." And he saw my prediction for the Spurs game being only 3-2 to Spurs. He said, "What? Don't be ridiculous. We're going to absolutely destroy them. How is that only 3-2? And, I would like to apologise to him from man to man. You're right. I did put too much confidence in Spurs. You should have. I should have put less in the confidence, because goals from Varanic and an Aurier own goal, which I'll be honest was quite funny. For Norwich, made sure they get a 2-2 draw with Eriksson and Kane getting goals for Spurs. Norwich taking the lead twice in the game, with Spurs having to come back. And to be fair, despite being last in the table, still Spurs are up to 6th. Norwich will definitely take that result. As I said in my prediction video, these are the kind of games where Norwich at home will be up for them. Despite the form, they've been up for the likes of Man City, Chelsea and Arsenal, all at home. and they have played very well. And the thing is, Norwich have been playing well over the last couple of weeks. They just need to start getting wins. In their last 4 games, they've been playing very well, but only collecting 2 points in total, which is not a good. Which they need to get some wins overall. And Spurs, to be fair, need to. When it comes to Spurs, they need to learn how to actually win a game comfortably, and not. Well, first of all, they need to win this game and then not drop points, because they had 15 shots throughout the entire game, 59% possession, which you'd expect from a Spurs side playing Norwich, but then you'd also expect them to convert with the likes of Kane, Ali and Ericsson, and also not be leaky at the back. But as I've said many times, if you play Serge Aurier, you give any team a chance. And I will say Norwich should probably feel hard done by through the VAR decision, because it's incredibly tight. I'm not sure you can tell whether he is offside or not. It's incredibly tight. I don't think it should be overruled. I think one of my friends sums it up best when talking about VAR. He said to me, we wanted VAR to rule out the clear and obvious errors. We didn't want them to look so far down the line you can't practice. You need like a magnifying glass to actually see the offside. Like, that is not what we want from VAR. And some people say, well, offside's offside. It's if it's a matter of like you wearing a slightly bigger boot to the other person, then that is not offside to me. Anyway. Back to where these teams then go on to on New Year's Day. Norwich are going to host Villa. Meanwhile, Southampton are the side hosting Spurs on New Year's Day. We now move on to the other 5:30 game, which was West Ham 1, Leicester reserves 2. Because it was the Leicester reserves. Let's be honest, it was. When I did my prediction video, I completely forgot. Because I predicted Leicester to win, from that aspect I'm correct. I completely forgot that Brendan Rodgers said that he was going to rest players, so no Vardy, no Pereira, no Chilwell, no Maddison was on the bench, and no Sonuchu. And yet we still lost to them in a relatively convincing manner, despite only being 1 goal. It was absolutely ridiculous. And I should point out, at the start of this game, we did honour the life of Martin Peters, and I haven't said it yet. Rest in peace, Martin Peters. He's a West Ham legend, England legend, and he, one of the best, most underrated England players of all time, in my opinion. And to be fair, the fact we honoured him is such a shame. On this day, we honoured him. I mean, it's not a shame, obviously, that we honoured him. That was a bad way of phrasing it. But we honoured him with a performance like that, so lackluster, and so just, it was awful. At the end of the day, we were at home and had 43% possession, which is poor against us. It was a B team, Leicester side. They had Wes Morgan at the back. They had their second choice fullbacks. They had Iheanacho up front. It was poor. The one shining light was the fact that Fabianski was back and he saved that penalty. And we can't do anything about the other 2 goals. But it was just poor from all round. And we paid the price by starting both Afon Masuaku and Carlos Sanchez. Why we're doing that, I have no clue. And to be honest, I will say, this video would be a lot more angrier about West Ham if it wasn't for the news that broke the following night, later that night, that Pellegrini had been sacked, something I'd been calling for ages. You can look back at my videos. I've been calling for it for ages. And since then, we have been, David Moyes has come back to replace him. And I think I'm a lot more optimistic about this appointment than most West Ham fans, because people are saying he's had the worst win percentage, second worst win percentage other than Gianfranco Zola. First of all, he played 31. He managed 31 games. He won 9 of them, which isn't great, but he also drew a lot of them. He drew 10 of them, which, if you're in the relegation battle with a par side at best, which was what we were, getting 10 points rather than losing those games is not bad at all. And only losing 12 of your games out of 31, it's not a bad record at all, I don't think. And also, they're saying it's worse than Avram Grant. Let's be honest, he lost a lot more games than David Moyes, and than drawing. And also, you've got to take into account that he did a lot better in the cups. Which David, but just did nothing in the Premier League whatsoever. So I'm fine with this appointment. He's got a much better side, in my opinion, talent-wise, than he did when he took over a couple years ago. So I do think I do feel an air of confidence under David Moyes that he will get the players working. And he said it himself in his interview. He wants to play, relatively attacking football. despite what you may think about this style of football, relatively attacking football it might bring in some defensive like sturdiness. It also might bring in some slightly Route One style play at points, but I think that's fine depending on who you play. If you remember, a couple years ago, we under Moyes we played Spurs. At Wembley Stadium, Spurs dominated us the entire game, but we pretty much put 9 at the back, then took our first chance and almost nicked a win. If he continues with that style of play and it works, then why change it? David Moyes' first game in charge will be against Bournemouth on New Year's Day, and I do apologise, Leicester fans, if you do watch these. Leicester obviously remains second in the league, and Leicester, who probably will have a relatively strong side again, go up to Newcastle for the 3 o'clock kickoff. We now move on to the late kickoff, Burnley, Manchester United, which was Burnley 0, Manchester United 2, goals from Martial and Rashford, meaning Man United move up into 5th. I might have got this completely wrong. Burnley just didn't look on the pace whatsoever. And it's at home, only 39% possession against the subpar Man United side. I know they've been on decent form, but it's a Man United side that's only won 2 games away from home all season. So you thought they maybe put a bit more fight into the game. Only 1 shot on target, which is definitely something they've been struggling with recently. The amount of shots on target they've had, and it does mean they're now down to 13th in the league. Which, considering the start they had, they could have done a lot better. As for Man United, on the other hand, very impressive win. And they seem to be finding their stride under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It feels like they're a momentum team. They'll have patches of good form, but then they'll have patches of bad form. This is definitely a patch of good form they are in at the moment. And I'm sure for Man United fans' sake, they would hope it continues. And the fact that they were, mid-table around October time, the fact they're 5th, very impressive, no matter how much you may not like them. Burnley next host Aston Villa on New Year's Day. Meanwhile, Man United play a massive game against Arsenal in the late kickoff. Speaking of Arsenal, we now move on to the Sunday games, where it was Arsenal 1, Chelsea 2, with late goals from Jorginho and Abraham cancelling out Aubameyang's earlier goal, meaning Arsenal once again lose, and once again lose at home. It is a dire situation for Arsenal. There were promises. There were promises of good. They did actually play quite well throughout the game. Mikel Arteta definitely has improved them in a way. And look, at the end of the day, they were winning up until the 83rd minute. They were probably thinking they'd won this game, but then a crucial error from Bernd Leno cost them dearly. And then just being caught on the counter-attack. Once again, to be fair, their issues do also lie with the fact that they had Mustafi. Similar to Aurier, there are certain players where if you have them in the lineup, you give any team a chance. Our ones are Carlos Sanchez and Masuaku, so that we practically gave Leicester the win by putting them both in our team. Yay! But yeah, overall, Chelsea were not a good side. They weren't the side I thought they were going to be going into the game, but they did get the win. They did turn around their fortunes as of late and get and have now beaten both North London sides away from home, which you've got to give credit to Frank Lampard for doing. And he now needs to push on. He needs to get a home win now, and he needs to get the form back they had around November, October time, where they looked a danger and a threat. As for Arsenal, they are now 12th in the league at the turn of the year. They have lost more games than they have won. It's a very, very bad time for them. In fact, they've won the same amount of games as Aston Villa this season, who are in 18th, which is a damning stat. Mikel Arteta needs to turn it around very, very quickly. And that very, very quickly thing will happen on New Year's Day at home against Manchester United. Well, it needs to happen anyway, sorry. Meanwhile, Chelsea are away at Brighton. We now move on to Liverpool 1, Wolves 0. Goal from Sadio Mane, splitting the sides. VAR was definitely the main issue here in this game. The goal from Liverpool, yeah, absolutely, it should stand. There's no issues there. The overruling was good. The goal for Wolves is absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. Um, I don't get how you can tell that's offside. Um, I think someone put it best on like Instagram or something. Neto was going to be the scorer of that goal. He's like 19 or something. A 19-year-old's best moment ruined by an unfair call. Like that sums it up best. Liverpool now have maintained the entire first half of the year with only 2 points dropped in 20 games, which is impressive. Which is incredibly impressive. Even if City was slightly better, I reckon Liverpool would still be top of the league. As for Wolves, they should take no shame in losing to Liverpool. To be fair, despite having only 30% possession, they matched Liverpool on 4 shots and only had 1 less shot on target than them, which you got to take credit for, which you got to be pleased for. And they are still 7th in the league. They are still in the European spots, still in Europe. They're having a tremendous season, you got to say. And to be fair, you've also got to give them credit. Within the space of 2 days, playing City and Liverpool ain't easy. So the fact they've come away with a win and an unfair 1-0 loss, very impressive on their part. We now move on to the final game of this week. But before we do, let's see what Liverpool and Wolves are playing. Wolves play Watford on New Year's Day. Meanwhile, Liverpool have the extra day off playing Sheffield United on the Thursday. We now move on to the final game of the season. The final game of the week. As Man City played Sheffield United, one winning 2-0 with goals from Aguero and Kevin De Bruyne. This was another one where VAR heavily interfered. Now, the goal is slightly offside, I'll admit. It is a bit more obvious than other decisions this week. But in my opinion, the first Man City goal should not stand. The ref does clearly get in the way of the Sheffield United player, pretty much, and it was a bad day. And as you can imagine, Chris Wilder was not a happy man about the decision. And he said VAR's not helping the game. In some ways, I could agree. In some ways, disagree. The issue with VAR is it's not ruling out the controversies, which was the intention of it. And this does, by the way, mean Sheffield United have now come to their first loss away from home all season. They should take no shame in their first loss coming to Man City. So they didn't manage a shot on target if you don't count the offside one. But they still managed 8 shots. However, though, it was a pretty stereotypical Man City performance. 73% possession, 16 shots to 8. It keeps them third in the league and only still 1 point behind Leicester for that second spot. So that overall, they should be relatively happy with this win. In the same way, Sheffield United should take pride in their performance. It doesn't get any easier for Sheffield United, as on Thursday they are going to Liverpool. Meanwhile, Man City are home to Everton. So that is it for this week's games. Now let's go see how my fantasy team did. Obviously, with Leicester's rotation, a couple of my players did get subbed out. Them being Sonucci, Lundstrom also got subbed out, and my captain Jamie Vardy. But thankfully, the fortunes changed. Thankfully, it was slightly better from the other players. Dunk getting 8 points, Robertson getting 6. Schmeichel somehow making enough saves at the West Ham game to get enough to earn 3 points. Abraham 7, Aubameyang got 9, De Bruyne 14, and Mane as my vice captain getting 22, meaning I end up on 74 points this week, which is a very, very good turnout. So that is going to be it for this week's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you like, share, and subscribe. And I will turn on the notification bell. Sorry, that is important. And I will see you tomorrow on New Year's Eve for the prediction video for week 21.